Hey y'all, this is Wendy. Jill asked me to read a story to y'all, so that's what I'm gonna do tonight. And y'all know me, I don't really like to call it stories because sometimes when we hear the word story, we think maybe it didn't happen, or it's made up. So I like to call them testimonies. I like to call accounts and things that happen in the Bible as testimonies. So I am going to read y'all the testimony of the Last Supper. And I'm going to be reading from this page. So sorry I won't be looking at you. But this is my Winnie the Pooh. We having a good snuggle time tonight. I hope y'all been doing good. Just staying home and having a good time with family. Okay, so let's get started. The testimony of the Last Supper. On the first day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread, the disciples asked Jesus, "Where would you like us to plan you to have the Passover feast?" And Jesus said to them, "Go into the city and find a man and tell him that we would like to come to his house for Passover." First of all, let me tell you what Feast of Leavened Bread is and what Passover is. They're actually the same thing. The Jews celebrated the Passover ever since the time of Moses, when the Lord saved all the Israelite babies. This was when the Lord passed over their houses and they were kept safe. During the time of Passover celebrations, the people didn't eat or have any bread in their homes with yeast in it. So yeast is what makes the bread big and puffy. So without the yeast, the bread is flat, and that is why they call it unleavened bread. So the disciples did just what Jesus asked. They went and found a place and got ready for Passover. Then evening came, and Jesus and his 12 disciples sat to eat the meal. The disciples were eating quietly because they had a lot on their minds. They were worried, and some people wanted to kill Jesus since he was getting so popular. Jesus could see the disciples were worried, and he said to them, "I tell you the truth, one of you here will betray me." And the disciples looked at each other in shock, and some of them asked Jesus, "It isn't me, is it, Lord?" And Jesus replied, "The one who dips his bread into the bowl with me will betray me. I will die just as it is written, but the man who betrays me will feel sorry forever." And then Jesus looked over, and Judas had his head bowed down, and he asked Jesus quietly, "It isn't me, is it?" And Jesus said, "Yes, you are the one." And Judas's head went down even lower, and he hoped that none of the other disciples had heard what Jesus had said, but they were paying more attention to Jesus breaking apart the bread, so they didn't hear. He thanked God for the bread and shared it with his disciples and said, "Take this and eat it. This is my body, which is given for you." And then he took a full cup and thanked God for it and said, "This is my blood, which will be poured out for many people so that their sins may be forgiven." And they all took a sip from the cup. This meal continued, and it was a long celebration. The disciples took their time because they enjoyed talking with Jesus and asking him questions. After some time, Jesus got up from the table and went to a different part of the room, and he took off his everyday clothes and he put a large towel around himself to look like a servant would in those days. And he poured water into a large bowl and began to wash the disciples' feet. And then he dried their feet with the towel that was wrapped around him. First of all, Jesus is like a king, but even greater than a king, he is the King of Kings. By washing the disciples' feet, he was doing something that only a servant would do. This would be like if someone famous come into your house and started cleaning your room, even getting down on their hands and knees to clean under your bed. It probably won't happen. That probably wouldn't happen. When it was Jesus's turn, when it was Peter's turn to get his feet cleaned, he said to Jesus, "Lord, are you going to wash my feet?" And Jesus said, "You don't understand what I'm doing, but you will later." And Jesus says that to us a lot of times. You don't understand now, but you will understand. And Peter said, "No, you'll never wash my feet." He said this because he didn't feel right having Jesus wash his feet. He knew Jesus was somebody very special. And Jesus said, "If I don't wash your feet, Peter, you cannot be with me." And then Peter said, "Just don't wash my feet, but wash my hands and my head too." And Jesus explained that he only needed to wash his feet, and that would be enough to make his whole body clean. When Jesus had finished washing all the disciples' feet, he put his everyday clothes back on and he returned to the table. "Do you understand what I've done for you?" And Jesus asked them. "You call me teacher and Lord, and that is who I am. And now that I've washed your feet, you can also wash one another's feet." This is an example how you should treat others. You don't have to wash other people's feet, but doing nice things for others like Jesus did. He was a servant, and so we can do a lot of things to help people and be a servant like Jesus was, and that's what he wants us to do. And Jesus gives us a promise if we will do those things that he asks us to do, that he'll bless us. So I'll let y'all go, and I hope y'all have a good night's sleep, and just know Jesus is singing over you tonight, and he is with you. He won't ever leave you, and all you got to do is just sing with him. Just know that he's there, and tell him just that he's welcome to be with you. So I will see y'all soon, and I love y'all.